or worker, or teach at Harvard or Yale or Columbia. And then, oh yeah, also during that time, another aspiration I had briefly, but it was there, was to run for Congress, to be a congressperson. Dude, I used to kneel before, get down on my knees in front of the establishment. So I'm just here today to tell everyone that I'm a changed man, and I hope you can bring me into your hearts, because I have changed. I no longer want to do nasty things to the establishment.
As soon as you said that, YouTube started working, so I'm starting to see viewers on YouTube. Disregard that last 30 seconds. I think Kamala Harris is real, and the energy behind her is real, because all the articles in Slate and MSNBC say
you cannot stop black girl magic.
Yep.
Even when it becomes black woman magic.
Mm-hmm.
Because then it's matured into like a fine wine, and the power is just unstoppable.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
black woman magic. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm voting for 8 years of Meg twerking at every presidential function.
I was going to say, the black girl magic, just watch the Olympics for a few minutes tonight. You'll see some black girl magic, I promise you. Usually in very tight shorts. I can't wait for the track and field events. But anyway, so Kamala, are we done with her? Is that enough discussion
about the Olympics
running?
And we're talking about...
I would so much rather talk about Sha'Carri Richardson and the Jamaican sprint team than Kamala Harris, who also claims to be Jamaican when she's not claiming to be Indian, when she's not claiming to be super duper black.
Yeah.
She's so black, man. The thing about Kamala, you know, like, she's just fucking black, man. I look at her, I'm like, damn, that bitch is black. Everything she says is black. She just got a whole blackness just emanating from her. It's just nonstop blackness. She's like the Black Pantheress. There's just, when I look at her, I can't even see light because there's so much blackness.
Yeah. She's so black that she listened to Tupac before he even released. She listened to Snoop Dogg in 1988. That's how black she is.
She smoked weed before she started locking people up for smoking weed.
Yeah.
Which is like, that's a very black thing to do, because you will find in the big cities, you will find lots of black people on both sides of that. You'll find lots of black people smoking weed and lots of black people locking up black people for smoking weed. It's a thing in the black middle class, which she, you know, claims to hail from. I still don't even know, like, her dad. Oh, the other story. So Caleb Mopan, who's a communist, is actually very useful, though, despite being a communist. He wrote a book that I had no idea existed until recently, many years ago, on Kamala Harris, sort of basically a left-wing critique of Kamala, especially, I think, her record here in the Bay Area as a district attorney and senator, etc. And it's, I mean, I knew most of this dirt, but it's so devastating, and some of it I didn't know. I mean, she was even worse than I thought. She's very much like she's very much a black woman Joe Biden. It's kind of interesting that they found each other, right? It's sort of like they both present themselves as like this super likable human. This is the veneer, right? Super likable human, compassionate, I don't know, nice person. And yet their entire records from the beginning of their political careers till now is about war and incarceration. Both. I mean, that's really what's defined them. Joe, we know, voted for and supported every single U.S. military intervention since 1970 when he's been in Congress. Every single U.S. military intervention, whether it was done by Gerald Ford or Jimmy Carter or Ronald Reagan or Bill Clinton, doesn't matter. He loves them. He also, of course, authored the 1994 crime bill, which, resulted in 2.3 million Americans in prison today, including my good friend Jason, who yesterday entered Coleman Low Security Prison in Florida to do a 3-year term for shipping a box of MDMA. We're still doing that, everybody. Yeah. MDMA, which is used by therapists. So that's Joe Biden's world. That's what he has stood for. That's what he has helped create more than anybody. Kamala, Caleb Moped. You guys, everybody, check out, again, communist, hammer and sickle communist, capital CP. No doubt about it. I don't want to be in Caleb's society, but they are useful, the communists, when they critique the existing current regime, and it's devastating. So I forgot about this one. Maybe the highlight of her sordid career as the district attorney in San Francisco is that she oversaw, there's a drug lab, right, in every municipality that evaluates whether people are guilty or innocent. These are employed by the courts or whatever, the prosecutor's office. And these are notoriously faulty and corrupt and horrible. And there's been amazing reporting on this, I think even in Reason magazine. And there was a guy, many guys and women, I believe, who were exonerated by drug testing, and she overruled it. So you'll see. I mean, it's remarkable. It's not that she's particularly sadistic. She sent, I think, 2,000 people to prison for weed. I mean, that alone. She threatened to jail parents of delinquent children. It's not delinquent, sorry, truant children.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a very proud former truant. I was a chronic truant, as a matter of fact, in California schools, the very schools that she was targeting. But yeah, she threatened, I don't think she did, but she threatened to jail any parent of any child who was chronically truant, like I was. And, to which I say, so how long have you been working for Massa? Because that's a slave revolt. That's a straight, we were forced by the government to come to this place every day and stay there from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And if we don't leave that place, it's illegal and punishable by law. It's slavery. Also, the people who are in that place can do pretty much whatever they want to us, and we have to abide by their rules. It's slavery. So when I was running away, yeah, man, Kunta Kinte. Kamala Harris is on the side of Massa, even though I'm white, she's whatever she might be. But that is really the fundamental divide, honestly. It's between those who live for their own lives, the people in their own lives, their own freedom, and those like Kamala Harris who live to manage and regulate and govern other people. It's a remarkable thing. And you'll find it in particular in vice principals and principals of schools. You'll find it, of course, in prosecutors, most importantly, and in politicians. So Kamala just is the epitome of that personality, which is very rare, thank God. But almost every one of them occupies a position of power, usually within the state. And she is, again, the epitome of that person whose will to power over others, not for her own self, but over others, and her luck in having her color and her positionality, as they say, in the Bay Area in the 1990s when she could fuck Willie Brown and get ahead, all has led to her being president. It's an amazing moment that speaks to and illuminates so much in our society. This is arguably, I mean, I think if you were to give 1,000 Americans randomly, a weekend alone hanging out with somebody, and they picked Kamala Harris, I mean, she would lose any contest. She would be the least popular person in that contest. I mean, she's an awful authoritarian, vacuous human being who will clearly clearly destroy masses of human beings' lives or not, depending entirely on which way the political wind is blowing. So in the 90s, when she was coming up, it was cool to put people in prison because that was the Clinton era, the Clinton Biden era of the drug bill, the crime bill, both. That's when it was cool and Democrat and liberal to crack down on those Negroes who are fucking ruining the cities, as Hillary Clinton said. And now, though, oh my God, she's so woke and black girl magic, and I love black people. And oh my God, if you even like breathe around a black person, you should go to prison. And but she'll also slaughter Palestinians by the bushels, and always has. You know, it's just, I mean, there's clear this chick is, and oh well, we haven't even mentioned how just plain stupid she is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the lack of the talent is something else. Sarah Palin could run circles around Kamala Harris intellectually, and I'm serious. And Sarah Palin has a better rack. So why are we even discussing this woman?
Yeah, the Huffington Post did some reporting on this 5 years ago, but there were some parents who were sent to jail for truancy of their
person.
Yeah. Yeah, Huffington Post reported on the truancy thing 5 years ago. The article is called "The Human Costs of Kamala Harris's War on Truancy," and yeah, there are some parents who did go to jail for this. They were arrested and they faced a $2,500 fine or up to a year in jail for their kids missing 10% of the school year or more.
Guys, it's slavery. I'm sorry. Public schooling is slavery. You can call it day slavery, you know, like with day camps, it's only during the day. Okay, I'll give you that. But let's just say your children were subject to day slavery for 13 years of their lives. Every day, 5 days a week, from September to June, they got to go to this place and do what's told to them. And also, the people who run this place and staff it are all government. It is the government. Like the draft, I'm begging everyone to think about these institutions as forms of slavery, because that's clearly what they are. And with public schooling, it's day slavery of children. And I was one of its victims, Kunta Kinte. And so Kamala, clearly, what really what distinguishes her and characterizes her is that decision. The decision, again, I've said this before, she and I grew up in the same basically neighborhood, South Berkeley, at the same time, 1970s, before she moved to Montreal for high school. But throughout elementary school and middle school, she and I were here in the same school system, taking the same school buses. I did not know her, at least I wasn't aware of knowing her, but we were in the exact same system at the exact same time. So I know of what I fucking speak, Kamala. The social engineering project that was busing in the early 70s, made famous by Boston, which of course is always depicted entirely as just, you know, this racist backlash against the civil rights movement by cracker Irish whites in Boston who were throwing rocks at black kids. No, it was a social engineering project of totalitarian proportions. Absolutely. You put children on buses to create racial equity? That sounds sort of Nazi-ish to me. In fact, it's very Nazi-ish, just reverse Nazism. But Kamala chose that. She chose the side of those who want to engineer. She's very proud of being bused. I always talk about it. It's amazing. We're the same buses, same time, same first generation of children to be bused in this country. She talks about it with great pride, and it's one of the things that is, it's kind of one of her major resume points, actually, is that she was bused for racial integration in the 70s. For me, it's always been a source of trauma. Like I've always talked about as like the worst thing that's ever been done to me by the state, which is probably true.
Well, she brought this up. She brought this up in 2019 when she was on the debate stage in the primaries debating Joe Biden, and
Right.
she called Joe Biden racist for opposing school busing and
Right.
for opposing integrated busing. So,
right.
Yeah, her first race bait on the national stage was calling Joe Biden racist for opposing integrated busing.
What'd she say? I was that girl or something like that.
I was that girl.
I was that girl. Right.
Out of all the things to call Joe Biden racist for, she chose that.
Right. Exactly. Right. To oppose racist social engineering, which is what busing and integration was. 100%. Your boy here. I was one of the first guinea pigs, as was she. She thinks it was awesome, or at least she says it was awesome. I do not. I will leave it to the audience to decide. Although, you'll notice that we have no racial engineering busing going on anymore, and we haven't for decades. I can't remember the last time we've tried that. Profound failure in American society. I have not seen a single black person in this country like carrying a banner calling for it, by the way. I wonder who really wanted it. Was it black people who wanted to like make sure we had exact racial parity in every single public school in the world? And we were going to put children on buses at 6 a.m. every single day and ship them across town to make sure that it's just the most disgusting fascist shit I've ever heard of. It's like, it is true liberal fascism. And again, she claims that as, I guess, the highlight of her life, that she was socially engineered in my fair town of Berkeley, California. But she chose that side. I chose the other side. And I maintain, and I say this in my book, Renegade History, and I say that all the time. For me, that is the fundamental divide in politics. It's between those who choose her side, those of the managers, the regulators, the statists, the governors, the district attorneys, the prosecutors, those people. Very few of them, thank God, but it's very few, who choose between those people and those of us, everybody else who choose to live life and be free and not govern other people's. We just don't have an interest in like governing you. It's weird, but it's not weird. It's actually normal. She is the epitome, okay.
Yeah, I think that's the big criticism to make of her, is that she would be like Trudeau is to Canada for the United States. She would be a very dumb, inexperienced person who does not know how to wield executive power, who feels totally justified to wield it in the most brazen ways. Somebody who would enforce hate speech laws, somebody who would bypass the Constitution. She's already talked about doing an assault weapons ban through executive order. She's talked about bypassing Congress, even if Roe versus Wade doesn't get congressional backing, maybe protecting that nationally, executively. And then on the competency tip, we've got a Rumble super chat from Fuego de Bacero. Kamala Fetterman 2024. I think Fetterman would be the perfect choice. I think it's time for him to be elevated on the national stage. I think a freshman senator is time for himself to get the recognition he deserves.
So I'm going to say more about Kamala's psychological makeup, because again, I feel entitled, having been raised in the same neighborhood as she was. No, I will say that I think this is, most people would agree with me on this. If Kamala Harris, instead of having been born in Berkeley in 1965, was born in Biloxi, Mississippi in 1965, I believe that Kamala Harris, if she had been born and raised and stayed in Biloxi, Mississippi, would now currently be calling for a national ban on abortions. That's who we're dealing with. Again, this is not an ideological person, and people need to understand the difference between, there are people on the left who are ideological. Bernie Sanders is ideological. AOC is mostly ideological. People on the further left outside the Democratic Party, they're mostly ideological. They're motivated by that. They really care about it. That's what drives their decision making. Not so with others. So anyway, I would just go ahead.
Oh yeah, she's definitely transparently a careerist, and that's I think the biggest problem in Washington is everybody's a careerist that doesn't care about their constituents, that always tries to see what's the thing to be said that will raise their status, and yeah.
It's an interesting thing now that I'm sort of thinking about American history and actually even sort of leaders in other countries. Like there is an interesting and not interesting. It's a very important divide, crucial divide. We need to understand the heads of state who are driven by ideology and those who are not. She's not. Biden, it's hard to say. I think generally not. They both seem to me to be mostly careerists. Okay. But there are a lot, and I think those of us who are hostile to the state tend to underestimate the power of ideology in the motivations of their leaders. It's big, but I think it's faded. I think that, with the Kennedys and the Roosevelts and the Wilsons and the Lincolns, right? Most or all of them were driven powerfully by ideological commitments. They really believed in stuff like the US is the greatest country in the world and must extend its beneficence to the world, and all the rest of it. Northern culture and society is clearly superior to Southern culture and society, and therefore we must dominate the South. That's Lincoln. All of it. I mean, it's amazing, messianic, megalomaniac, psychology that you don't even see much anymore. That was sort of common in the 20th century. You saw a lot of people, not just leaders, but like their followers and even like activists and political people who had these kind of messianic psychologies. And that has faded. And in particular, I think around the American empire, like people forget this. We used to have most American political people had sort of a religious devotion to the idea of the American empire, right? I mean, it was really a force for good, global good. It really felt like God acting through the United States because it was all around the world, right? When it's global, it feels like God's working through you. We are changing everyone's lives all around the world, which was true for better and worse, but usually worse. And I just don't see that. I mean, Kennedy's speech, the famous speech, the inaugural speech and subsequent speeches in which he really leans into this sort of evangelical vision of America as the global universal, because he was talking about space too, force for good, godliness, really. I don't feel like Tony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris really care, really think that. I mean, we've talked about this before, but that's a big deal, right? Because if they're just like Kamala Harris is clearly a careerist opportunist. I mean, if she's from Biloxi, she's a Republican. If she's from the Bay Area, she's a left-wing Democrat, obviously. But that really matters, right, as to how we analyze and understand their decision-making. We need to understand why they make the decisions they make. And so if it's just simply going with the wind within a particular confine, that's Kamala, that's important. But if we know that they're ideologically driven, then we can actually predict. We can predict where they're going. We can always understand every decision they make, right? Ideologically, they're following this script. But with Kamala, it's actually scarier and more difficult because we don't know. Because she was Indian 20 years ago. Now she's black. She's shifted on multiple things. What was the other big, massive shift she made? Oh, fracking. She was like totally opposed to fracking, and now she's like kind of for it. Mm-hmm. Goes on and on. I mean, she's obviously a chameleon. So that's scary to me because I don't actually know the names of the people who run the country, who she's following. Mm-hmm. I want to know who that is. Is it Ron Klain? Is it the chief of staff? So that's
Yeah. I think she sincerely, well, I don't know if she like has a worldview where she thinks why she has the power to do these things and how that will improve everybody's lives and a philosophical backing to it. But what was it, govtrack.org or whatever that nonpartisan organization labeled her the most liberal senator, that she consistently favored the most liberal policies, whether it was on immigration or whatever. She was obviously the most far left. And yeah, she's in this weird position now where she has to backtrack all of that and present herself as a moderate. I think she does want to accomplish things like national assault weapons ban, ingrain Roe versus Wade federally as a law. Do some sort of border reform that nominally says the border is safe, but really provides a path to citizenship for everybody who's been let in for the past 5-10 years. And all of this will be seen as victories. Like, she just wants to rack up victories, so she's seen as successful. That's the ideology that I see emerging for her, is that she wants to be known as a great person who had a successful administration if she gets in.
She's a great person. The froth, like the level of froth, the head on the beer.
Yeah. Well,
I've never seen such froth. I mean, that just go ahead.
Well, you drew the parallel to Biden, and I think, the ideology there is very similar as a careerist. Biden, in his, I guess, unofficial resignation speech, where he said he was stepping down, reiterated his promise to end cancer. He's always, like, throughout his whole career, promised to cure cancer. So,
has he?
Not yet. But yeah.
Wait, why? He's been working so hard on it.
Yeah.
So long.
And he like called it a moonshot. Like, curing cancer is like going to the moon. Like, we could do it if we just believe in it hard enough,
Just hustle enough. That's Joe, man. He's a hustler. I'm telling you, dude works. He should have been like a street corner drug dealer in Wilmington, which has a serious hood in it. By the way, he could have been a badass career corner boy. He would have been great at it. I mean, he probably would have died or gone to prison by the age of 22, but he would have been good under his own laws. But anyway,
or a phenomenal used car salesman. I think he'd be.
I said this when I saw him in person, he was like, dude's a car salesman. He's that just. I don't know if he was a good car salesman, but I'm just saying he was that's what he was meant to do. We got to talk about Israel.
Yeah. Oh, well, to wrap this up,
because they're trying to kill everybody. Still.
Yeah.
Because I hate Jews.
What? I know. What did the Jews do this week? I
fucking hate Jews. That's the main point of this whole show. Since before we were talking about Jews, that's the whole theme.
Yeah,
I hope people understand that now.
we didn't talk about Jews until October 7th, but we were boiling, just waiting for the opportunity to bring them up.
You dumbasses didn't even know the whole time. We were just laying the seeds of Jew hatred, of the next Holocaust, baby. Let's go. We need another Holocaust. I'm sorry,
but real quick, Trump brought up the Indian thing at the National Association of Black Journalists.
Oh my God, so delicious.
Yeah.
I strongly not recommend. I urge everyone. I think it's 35 minutes. Not a big deal. Go on YouTube. Go watch Trump at the NABJ, the National Association of Black Journalists. Oh gosh, this is some of the best entertainment I've experienced. I was laughing out loud with my AirPods in. It was too good. I wish we could play clips. I don't know. It's just so good. But although I will say, the middle idiot, there were 3 journalists who were interviewing him, and the middle one, even though she might have been the dumbest and least polished, she actually asked him some good questions. And I wish we could watch this, but yeah, I strongly recommend it. And he's just hilarious. And I would say that Trump's usefulness from my perspective, from my personal values, political values, he's most useful in his critiques of NATO, and U.S. foreign policy objectives generally. Number one, and number two is that he never got the memo about how to talk or how to act about race. He kind of missed the whole racial liberalism moment of the last 80 years. Kind of just missed it. He was never trained to think correctly about race. And so he will say things that are completely correct because he doesn't even internalize for a second the propaganda about race that we are fed constantly. So we are fed constantly that Kamala Harris is black, and you don't talk about black people and about whether or not they're black, and you don't question whether and he's just like, hey, wait a minute, she was Indian a minute ago, now she's black. What is this? Now she just chose to be black. I remember when she was all about Indian. Fantastic. I mean, and then sort of he also unwittingly, unconsciously reveals again another thing about race, which the right wing should listen to, which is the malleability of it. Like, my gosh, it changes all the time. Kamala Harris was Indian 10 years ago. Now she's super black. And, oh, but watch, tomorrow I'm sure she's saying and will say, I am both Indian and black. Oh, now you're both. Okay, so, but before it was all about being Indian. Now it's all about, so what is it? Actually, you're neither in a way, but whatever. Pick a category. It's all contingent and malleable and shifts constantly, which means that everybody, it's not written in your biology. Race is a social construct. Michael Weimer, what do you have to say about that?
Okay, this is why I want to bring up the Olympics, but first,
let's go. Let's do it. Yeah, no, I know what you want to say. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, for some reason, white people happen to be dominating the upper body strength category, like the shot put and the javelin toss. And for some reason, explosive hip movements and long distance running seems to be dominated by the black category. And for some reason, precision shooting seems to be dominated by East Asians. So pretty much uniformly across the board, we're seeing racial outcomes that people actually celebrate. And this happens pretty much every Olympic cycle. And yet this has nothing to do with biology, apparently.
You don't do racism well. Like it's not your blacks are strong. Wait, what is it about upper body strength? What, blacks are strong there too? What are you talking about?
Not in the way that the whites are.
Is that, I didn't know. Is that a thing among racists? You think that black people are less strong in their upper bodies? Never heard that, dude.
Well,
but I do think you might want to check the science books on that.
Again, I believe this is just a purely scientific observation. It seems to be the thighs which the black people dominate with, and the chest, the throwing,
which means they're more oriented around the sexual organs, which means they're the superior race. So what do you want to say now, bro?
Yeah, I'm just calling it like I see it. This is just what happens.
Upper body strength? What are you talking about? Like,
yeah.
Have you seen LeBron James? Like, what have you? What?
But like,
I don't get that part.
What? Something about Vikings and Nordic heritage and chopping wood
and bench presses.
Yeah,
that's our thing. What?
Yeah, apparently, yeah. I'm just reiterating the racial analysis of the Olympics this time. I'm not
okay. I just want to say that those people who are tuning in for geopolitical analysis are wondering. But let's go ahead. You want to talk more about like black people's thighs? We can do that. I mean, I've thought about that a lot lately, having watched the Olympics for a few days.
Yeah.
And I can't stress this enough. I cannot wait for the track and field to begin. But should we talk more about geopolitics? I think we should.
Yeah. Okay. So you see no correlation between biology and outcomes in the Olympics.
Oh, you're back to this. I see. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Grand Wizard talking again.
Mhm.
Between biology and outcomes.
Yeah. Like athletic outcomes in the Olympics.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's all about the biology, right? It's about what you think is the biology, how you determine and define the biology. Michael Weimer, you know, because you've read my book, that who were the, let me ask you, who were the, and let me broaden it so it's like you're totally fucked. Who were the, so fast twitch muscles is what we're talking about, right? Like sprinters, basketball players, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Running backs, you know, black shit.
Yeah, real quick, listener 523, go look at strongmen and powerlifting, whiter than Mitt Romney.
Whatever. That's like just like doing the same shit over and over again. I'm talking about true athleticism. It is. Anybody can be a good power lifter. You just do the same shit over and over again.
I didn't say they were better because I didn't say they were inherently better. I'm just saying that outcome plays out.
Okay. When we think of athleticism, right? LeBron James, Michael Vick, Allen Iverson, right? I mean, Michael Jordan, guys who were like artists as well with their bodies. Is that fair? Yeah. Okay. So, and there's a fast twitch thing. You know, the great boxers, football players, basketball players have a fast twitch thing going, which kind of really makes them into great athletes. And so now we think of those kinds of athletes as almost exclusively black, with a couple of exceptions, but, you know, overwhelmingly black. And we think, as you do with your racist, degenerate mind, you think, well, that's just a biological thing. Black people are just born better athletes. Like, that's just right. So, Michael Weimer, I ask you, who were the greatest fast twitch boxing, basketball playing athletes before World War II in this country?
Yeah, I mean,
Jews. Yeah. Okay, Jews. Let's get right to it. Jews.
Italians also.
And Italians, but Jews dominated boxing and basketball in particular. People don't know this. For decades before World War II. Boxing and basketball. And when I say dominate, I'm talking about a majority of the boxing world champions and a majority of the NBA high scorers were, yes, everybody, Jewish, with names like Rosenbaum and Katz and Mandelbaum. Yes, look it up. And then the Jews collectively in this country decided to assimilate, become full-class citizens, et cetera, et cetera. So by the end of World War II, they gave up those pursuits and interests and became what they became. But before then, they were known as great dancers. They were known as being very good, you know, outstanding street dancers, etc. And jazz singers, Al Jolson, very famously, but they were the best athletes. No, better. They were considered to be, and I have evidence of this again in Renegade History, of like sports writers talking about Jews as being the best natural athletes in America. And now we look at Jews and we're like, oh, you're a bunch of good accountants. You can own sports teams, or maybe be the CPA for a sports team, but you ain't gonna play anything, which is true. There's, I think, 0 Jewish players in the NBA, and I'm quite sure there are 0 Jewish players in the NFL. They abandoned it, but this, again, these things which seem so set in biological stone, right? Black people are better athletes. Black people can jump higher. black people can run faster. Changes. Even that changes over time. And the least athletic people one day back in the day were the most athletic people, Jews. So back to you, son.
Okay, so your position is the only reason why there are black athletes is because Jews gave up on it and decided to pursue world domination instead of athleticism.
Wait, so the elders of the protocols of the elders of Zion has weighed in, and I'm not accepting it. Would you like to say something that's not disgustingly anti-Semitic?
I'm just trying to fully understand your argument here. That's all. So
I didn't say they chose world domination. I said they chose to assimilate into American culture and to become uber Americans, which this is why, like, I am the way I am. Like, the Jews in my life are all like fucking Americans. It's like, I'm not Jewish. None of them are Jewish. Like, there's not. And that was the goal of major Jewish organizations. They wanted to make Jews into Americans, and so that people would not look at a Jew and think that they were anything other than American, which is what they accomplished. Why are you fighting me? What's going on? You okay?
So, yeah, people are arguing basketball is different than the 100-meter dash.
Look at.
I'm not.
Be my guest. Look at 100-meter dash times and records in the 1920s and 30s. I promise you, there's gonna be some Jews in there.
Yeah, there was a guy named Jesse Owens who might have been good. I don't know.
He was good. He was the first Negro who beat the Jews. It's true.
Yeah. So,
do you understand? Science changes.
Yeah.
Science, meaning scientific facts, change real quick. Fuck science. Fuck facts. Next.
All right.
Dude, we got to go to the Middle East.
All right. So the Jews are assassinating world leaders and raping Palestinians. Which one do you want to cover first?
God, I didn't. Yeah. Wow. These demonic motherfuckers. The thing is, what you just said is true if you had said Israeli government officials, not Israelis, but yeah. Jesus, man. I mean, I don't know. Zionism is a trip. It really is this bad. And it's like the logic of it since the beginning, inception of it, and we've talked about this many, many times, like it just was always pointed to this. Like, they always said back in the 1910s and 20s, they were like, yo, if we do this thing, you're going to have a big, nasty war in about 100 years, but you're always going to have a nasty war. So yeah. So, all right. This story about the rape is something else. And it might be more important than the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Iran, actually, because it speaks to the collective consciousness of Israelis. And I think there is such a thing in such a small country at war. Most people consider it to be an existential threat they're facing from Hamas, yada, yada. So I do think like 90+% of Israelis do kind of think the same right now. And anti-Zionists have been trying to say this to people for a while, and it's hard to get across. But again, it's hard for me to say this too, having not been to Israel. So I can't say for sure, but I think it's safe to say at this point that roughly half, something around half, but certainly a significant portion of Israeli society is objectively, technically, by anyone's definition, both fascist and racist. I mean, it's just true. And so that means that last week there was a report corroborated by many sources that looks quite credible that including American sources, CNN, I think, report. I mean, many, many mainstream outlets have reported on this, lending it credibility, that at least one Palestinian prisoner in an Israeli detention camp in the desert near Gaza was anally raped with, I forget, some kind of foreign objects. I forget what it was, but something like, and it was so severe that he had to get surgery and his bowel was ruptured. And so what happened was this came out and there was lots of corroborating evidence and like a whole uproar about it. And again, mainstream media, even in the West, was saying that this had happened. And the 50% of Israeli society that I just described as being racist and fascist, led by the settlers in the West Bank, who believe straight up and only that that land, all of it belongs to them because the Bible says so, and they will say that's the only reason they have and that's all they need. Those people rose up. Oh, sorry, I missed a step. The Israeli government actually began to punish those soldiers who did this. I forget exactly what they did, but they relieved them of their positions, and then I think started to initiate court-martial proceedings. Okay, so the Israeli government, the IDF itself, acknowledged to some extent that this was legitimate. Okay, the settlers, the right wing in Israel, which again is now about half the country, rose up in outrage against this and began protesting, and then a huge contingent of them, hundreds of them, went to that prison, that detention camp in the desert, and stormed the gate and broke in to stop whatever it was that was happening in terms of disciplining those IDF soldiers. Now, the amazing thing is, everybody, that in response to the claim made that Israeli soldiers had anally raped a Palestinian prisoner, the response to that was not that, oh, we didn't do that, we would never do that, we are a moral army, that didn't happen, this is false. It wasn't that. None of them have said that. The whole argument, the whole point that they have made, the Israeli protesters, the right wing and Israeli government, the half of the Israeli population, has been, we should be allowed to do whatever we want to them because they might be Hamas. Nukba is what they call them. Nukhba. Nukba. That's their sort of like slightly pejorative term for Hamas terrorists, etc. I've not seen one of them deny that this has happened. They've all said, no, we need to be allowed to do whatever the fuck we want to them because they're Nukba. That's where we are in that war. But also, at the very same time over the last week, as this was happening, as Israeli society was demonstrating that it is largely fascist and racist, and I really mean this, this is what motivates most of them, a majority of them, not all, but a majority of them, and this is really just plain. At the very same time, Netanyahu's government thought it was a good idea to assassinate one of the leaders of Hamas, who happened to be in Tehran for the inauguration of the new Iranian leader. This is Ismael Haniyeh. So, Ismail Haniyeh, there's many leaders of Hamas, right? Sinwar is famous. He's inside Gaza. He leads the Qassam brigades. He's kind of the military command, the main commander for Hamas. There's multiple Hamas political leaders, most of whom live in Doha and Qatar. Haniyeh is one of them. There's Mohammed Daif, who's another sort of legendary military commander who lives in Gaza. The guy they just killed, Ismail Haniyeh, I've known about him for a long time because he has been the guy in Hamas who has negotiated and talked to and always maintained a bridge with Israel, the United States, Great Britain, NATO. Like, he's always been the one bridge between Hamas and the West, between Hamas and its enemies. And then in every hostage negotiation deal going now for 20 years, not just recently, he's been the guy. He's been the guy who has done the negotiating for every hostage release deal. So every Israeli hostage who's been released over the last 20 years, not just recently, but 20 years, Haniyeh has been the guy who made sure that happened. I'm not defending the guy. I'm not saying he's a good guy. I don't care. It doesn't matter. The point is that was his position and role within Hamas, was to negotiate for the release of hostages and negotiate for the end of the war. That was his thing. Israel didn't talk to anybody but him. Alistair Crook, some people watching this will know him. He's on a lot of shows recently. He's on Judge Napolitano's show. He, British MI6, but also British negotiator with Hamas for many, many years. He and Haniyeh were like a partnership, and they together made sure during conflicts between Israel and Hamas that hostages were released, that the conflict was resolved. Most importantly, I believe every conflict that's happened, which has been, I mean, conflict meaning Israel bombing the shit out of Gaza, there have been 6 or 7 of them in the last 20 years. I believe every one of them, the end was negotiated by Ismail Haniyeh. So they went after him. They went after him, and they went way out of their way because he was in Tehran when they killed him, which was another statement. But just that they killed him, of all the Hamas leaders, they chose him, is clearly, among many things, a statement that we don't care about the hostages and we will not end the war. So that's who we have on our hands. That's the Israeli government. That's their position. This is in part fueled by Netanyahu knowing damn well that he will be prosecuted, probably convicted, and almost certainly have his political career ended as soon as the war is over. So Netanyahu has that personal stake in this, but Israeli society generally, we know this. I said this earlier. We've seen evidence again and again that they are maniacal and homicidal and sociopathic when it comes to the people of Gaza right now. And you can understand it from a micro level. If I lived in Israel and I'd always lived in Israel, I could probably understand that mentality. But that is the mentality of almost the entire country. They don't give a shit. Most Israelis are perfectly fine with killing lots and lots of children because they see Gaza as nothing but a cesspool of Jew-hating, fanatical Arab extremists who will cut their heads off and rape their daughters if we do anything but kill them. I mean, that's really it. So it's, people can look into Israeli public opinion, Israeli culture right now. Like, it's not an exaggeration. That is the vast majority of Israeli citizens think what I just said. It's not an exaggeration. And so they will not stop. They've just announced essentially that they will not stop by killing Haniyeh until, and there's only one force that can stop them in the world, it's the United States, until the United States of America stops them. Which brings us back to Kamala and Donald Trump. And let's talk about that. Like, there's been some interesting things there on foreign policy with both of those.
Yeah. We were talking last week about how Kamala might be, you know, she's from the extreme left wing of her party. She's from San Francisco. She's talked more about civilian deaths than Biden has. And she's looking to differentiate herself from Biden and potentially take out the Justice Department, put her own people in. But she has taken over $5 million of money from AIPAC.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that figure. I mean, I knew she could. Yeah, wow. 5 million?
Yep. The AIPAC tracker or whatever put it
Damn.
like 5.4 million.
Good for her. That's great. I'm proud of her.
And in 2017, she pledged her, support for Israel and their military in front of AIPAC. So things aren't too hopeful on that side, but maybe when she's posing with Bibi, she looks like she's not comfortable being there. Like there's an oppositional thing happening there. But there was the thing that Trump posted on Truth Social, where it was the president of Palestine offered his condolences for Trump's assassination attempt and said that political violence has no place and hopes Trump a speedy recovery. And Trump posted that saying, "I'm looking forward to meeting with Bibi Netanyahu," and the implication being, "Hey man, why haven't you bowed your head to me in my assassination attempt? This guy has the decency." Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey man, I think, and Trump made some other noise about Israel. When was that? Recently, last week. I forget which interview or whatever it was, but that was much better. Much better than Biden and Harris on this. I mean, he's really saying, as I understand it, like, this is not acceptable, what's going on. Like, we can't allow what's going on currently to continue. So I will step in and force them to stop, is how I hear this. Am I wrong? Is that not what Trump's saying? I believe in January. I really do, assuming he will win. I believe in January, when he takes office, I believe that the war will be over for sure, because I think that Trump is going to simply walk into Netanyahu's office and say, Biebs. And I don't know how he will do this exactly, but presidents have done this for 50 years, okay? Over and over and over again, they've stopped Israel from massacring people at a certain point. And I believe Trump's going to do the same thing.
Yeah. You know what? This might be like when the hostages were released, right when Reagan got inaugurated. It might be like some sort of backdoor deal that Bibi makes with Trump. Like, hey, you've got 6 months left to do all your slaughtering. But when I'm in there, this thing stops, and we have the Abraham Accords 2.0, and there's going to be peace for the 4 years that I'm president.
Dude, I like that. I like that a lot. Somebody clip that and put it on the internet, because that's going to be that watch. Probably brokered by Jared, but not necessarily. But I think you're right. Because here's why. So, right, because Bibi is clearly pro-Trump and thinks that Trump is a lock for him. Like that Trump will do nothing but serve Bibi's interests and the Likud party's interest, etc. Although he might be changing his mind now, who knows? But like until recently, certainly until October 7th, that had to be Bibi's thinking. And I've been watching right-wing Israeli media, by the way. And I didn't know this, but interestingly, like in Israel, Trump is way more popular and sort of mainstream than he is here. And the entire right wing of Israel, which is, again, more than half the country, is super pro-Trump and like loves Trump, and they just worship Trump and yada. Michael Tracey has reported on this recently.
Yeah, Miriam Adelson is still campaigning for Trump right now.
Yeah. Forget where I was going with that. But like but I think that number one, I think that will backfire when Trump gets elected on Netanyahu. I don't know how he's going to pull this off, but Trump's got a good record, and I just believe that this will happen, mostly because he has the will, and because of the history of U.S.-Israel relations, and because by January, my God, I mean, who's going to be opposed to stopping the war in Gaza by then? I do think he's going to lay some heavy hand on Netanyahu and stop him. What was I going to say? Something broader. and more important. But yeah, anyway, so it's your point. Oh, the October surprise theory that you were proffering, referring to Reagan and Iran.
Yeah.
That there's a deal in place between Trump and Netanyahu now. Right. I was going to say that favors both. That's what I was going to say. Both Trump and Netanyahu at the moment. Although if I were Netanyahu, I'd be very wary about Trump. Actually, I'd be more wary about Trump. I think Trump is more of a wild card on Israel than Biden and Kamala Harris are, than the Democratic Party leadership are, than Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi are. I think that Trump, I don't know exactly what Trump's going to do with Israel, but I think it's possible. I think he has said essentially that it's possible that he will step right in and stop the war no matter what Netanyahu wants. That's nothing that Schumer, Biden, Kamala, Pelosi would ever do. He's much more of a wild card on this. And I think, therefore, we have a greater chance of ending the war with him. And, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's it. Yeah. So go ahead.
Oh, what was it? The RNC speech. He quoted Viktor Orban, who said that the world was much safer under Trump, that nobody took any wild risks because there was a strong man in the United States and the United States projected strength. And so that's the image that Trump is putting forward, is that all this bullshit, all this fighting, it stops. You kids have to stop fighting once the big man is in charge.
So we remember when I gave that long soliloquy about the difference between ideologically driven leaders and non-ideological leaders.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it's the most important, is in our evaluation of Trump.
Yeah.
Because he is, I believe, and I've made this argument for years now, but I believe he is the first non-ideological president, certainly around foreign policy and American empire. He simply has not subscribed to that central component of American ideology that the U.S. should dominate and run the world. He hasn't. Well, and that's why they're trying to kill him, by the way. Yeah. That's why they've always trying to kill him. Yeah.
On that note, Biden and Harris are careerists and aren't ideological, but because they're so transparently careerists, they have to bow down to the dominating ideology. Trump isn't a careerist. He's taking a step back from his career.
Yep.
And he's serving the interests of the United States as he sees them. And he's a pragmatist that just wants the United States to be successful. He wants peace and prosperity. And
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Pragmatist was the word I was going to use. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Again, this is the first president like this. There simply has not been a president before Trump who was not bought into American exceptionalism, the whole ideology of it. He's the first one who's just like outside of it. And he's not necessarily opposed to it. He's just outside of it. So sometimes he looks at it and he says, oh yeah, America, we're the best. We're great. USA, red, white, and blue. And sometimes he looks at it and says, why are we investing in this thing called NATO and Europe when the Soviet Union doesn't exist? And sometimes he looks at it and he says, China, well, they're screwing us over with these trade deals. So let's be tougher on China, but just to get a better trade deal. He's never thinking the way that Woodrow Wilson and Abraham Lincoln and Franklin Roosevelt and John F. Kennedy thought, mm-hmm. which was the whole world needs to be like America. That's the way all American politicians have thought for 200 years. Trump does not. He's not interested in making the world into America. He loves America as it is. He's not interested in expanding it. He's not an imperialist psychologically. And that, I maintain, is why they have tried to destroy him. Because he has been the fly in the buttermilk of American empire from the beginning. They can't tolerate that, even though he's not an enemy. He's just not into it, but he happens to be the president or the future president. So,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this shakeup happening right now.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear me? Check.
Wait, I can't
Can you hear me now? Are we good?
Uh-oh. Why can't
Test.
I hear you?
Check. Can you hear me?
Can the chat hear Michael, or is it just me?
I'm pretty sure they can. Yep, my microphone's still coming through. They can hear me.
You can hear Michael, but I can't. Yep. Okay, great.
Okay.
My retarded self. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, I know what it is. Sorry. Michael, speak.
Check. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? You got me, Thad?
There. Now we're good,
okay.
right?
All right. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Where were we?
I was talking about this shift that has happened because Kamala is not popular. I think even amongst Democratic elites, I think the media is fawning over her. But I think, the elites of the Democratic Party picked Biden in 2020, and they wanted a centrist, and they got him in 2020. But there's been this massive shift to where some people are purporting that Donald Trump is actually the establishment candidate now. In that you've got the PayPal mafia and all these billionaires rolling for Trump. And it might seem that Democratic elites are actually going to let Kamala fail, that she's going to take the L this time as sort of a way to just wash her out and start over in the Democratic Party. I do want to talk about the PayPal mafia a little bit more. All these billionaires who were like Mark Andreessen, for example, who was a Hillary voter in 2016. Mark Zuckerberg, who hasn't explicitly endorsed Trump, but said Trump surviving the assassination was the most badass thing he's ever seen. And which is basically for somebody who spent $700 million in the last election cycle to kick Trump out and did all this massive censorship around COVID and around Trump himself to make his election impossible. To say anything nice about him is basically an endorsement. And these people have worked together forever. They have massive state contracts. They are deeply embedded in the establishment, and they seem to be fully putting their support behind Trump. And it might seem that they'll try to do another bait and switch or try to get establishment voices behind Trump or get Trump in. And yeah.
So Thiel in particular, but also Musk, have been, clearly right wing in various ways for years. Like we've known this, right? Let's just say anti-liberal, anti-democratic party, right? But others have not. So like, what was your, like, there's a split in the Silicon Valley, and the movement of Zuckerberg toward Trump, I guess, in that statement, what you're hinting at, which you're suggesting that Silicon Valley is moving toward Trump.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I think that's a change, because you had Thiel and Musk on the right clearly for years, but Zuckerberg was Democratic Party bitch boy, right? Andreessen was certainly not with the Republicans or the Democrats, very much an independent thinker. Now he seems to be leaning toward Trump for sure. But for years, I didn't see Andreessen doing anything that looked partisan. And then most of Silicon Valley, though, has always been Democratic, like the Google empire, infamously Democratic. I do think there might be a change. Maybe we'll see. Zuckerberg's statement was pretty shocking, and we'll see. If it is true, and I think it might be true, that Silicon Valley is kind of shifting in general toward Trump.
Oh, well, Microsoft just fired their whole DEI staff, which is a big shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember what we said about people who are ideologically committed and those who are not? Mm-hmm. So business famously has never been, if they were intelligent, ideologically committed. Imagine running a business that has to adhere in its practices to your political ideology. I mean, that makes you a nonprofit. That makes you a not profit. You can't do a business that is and have your political ideology make any substantial decisions about it. So, my point here is that I think Zuckerberg and company in sort of the mainstream of Silicon Valley are that. They're just business dudes who don't give a shit ultimately about politics, but they will do whatever the political power will tell them to do, which is why Twitter and Facebook started censoring all sorts of stuff after they were brought before Congress and told to do this. And I think what's happening now is that Zuckerberg and company, Silicon Valley, YouTube maybe, are seeing that Trump's probably going to win. He's probably going to win another 4 years of Trump, and that the Democrats are pathetic and hopeless and have no challenge to Trump. And that MAGA Trump, that whole thing is less scary than it used to be, and we're kind of used to it. And maybe it's not really fascist and racist and the Ku Klux Klan like we thought it was. So people are kind of accepting it. But if I were a big businessman, if I ran Facebook or Google or YouTube, and I'm, it's August of 2024, and I'm looking at what's going on, I'm thinking Trump's going to be the damn president, and MAGA is going to be powerful, and the Democrats are pathetic. And so I'm going to do what I can to have what they call a favorable legislative environment in the next 4 years. I don't want to piss off the dominant party, the party in power. If MAGA and the Republicans control the White House and the House, and then maybe the Senate, I want to be friendly with them. And I'm sure that's what Zuckerberg was thinking.
Mm-hmm. And in the same way that Kamala Harris was a deal that Joe Biden brokered with James Clyburn in 2020 for his support in South Carolina, it looks like J.D. Vance, who is not particularly popular or well-known, was a deal that Trump brokered with these Silicon Valley types. And he may not have gotten a big boost in popularity from J.D. Vance, but he got $245 million in fundraising from these Silicon Valley types. So seems like it's working out for everybody.
Yeah. So Vance, it's funny. He's like 1 degree removed from me or something like that. I mean, I've been finding out like a bunch of people in my immediate world, like friends of mine, acquaintances of mine, who are kind of buddies with him or like advisors to him, or he's definitely got a solid foot in the alt-right. No doubt about it. Like he's definitely in there. What's my read on Vance? I mean, I think so I start with foreign policy because that's the most important thing. He's been the best on Ukraine in the Senate, and I would say within the political establishment. He's the only one, I think, other than Massey. Within the political establishment has actually been a true critic of the Ukraine war. But then on everything else, fuck this guy. Like he's completely pro-Israel. I don't think it's ideological. I don't think it's deeply held, his commitment to Israel, but he sort of plays the game. He does what he's supposed to do, which right there, his kind of pro forma defenses of Israel, statements of solidarity with Israel sound like that to me. They sound like they don't come from his heart. They sound like they come from his staff or press releases or what AIPAC tells him to say. This is not an independent thinker. making decisions on his own about major, maybe the most major questions in foreign policy in the United States, and he's a senator. And so that alone, if you don't have any kind of independent thinking about one of the most important elements of foreign policy and you're a United States senator, I don't have much respect for you. I don't trust you. I don't know where you're going to go because, again, sounds like your ideological commitments are outweighed by whatever economic and political expediencies are in your face. So that's disappointing. I mean, I love what he said about Ukraine, or I should say I like what he said about Ukraine in general. So that's good. And I do think this was a message by Trump in part that the Ukraine war is over. And if I were Zelensky, I would be wrapping up business right now. Because assuming Trump wins, I think we talked about this last week, but you know, the announcement of Vance has got to be seen as that. Like, you're done, dude.
Yeah.
But on Israel and go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna wrap it up on that. Yeah. Sorry. Because I think we've covered this already, and we've got less than 10 minutes. I think we should talk about the elections in Venezuela.
Yes.
Yeah. Maduro edged ahead, and you've got Elon Musk saying, "Oh, they stole the election, just like the Democrats stole the election in 2020." And you've got all these alternative voices now begging for a regime change in Venezuela. So do we have transparent elections? Do the people support Maduro still? Are the uprisings against Maduro happening right now? Are they organic? What's happening in Venezuela?
So before we do that, let's talk about Elon Musk, because I think that's more important. So Elon Musk owns the most important media outlet in the world. We all agree on that. So his importance in terms of the thinking of the world, you know, I mean, really, like the discourse that's happening in the world, the dominant discourse in the world, he's the most important person in determining what that is. Wow. More important than the president of the United States. The president no longer, from his bully pulpit, tells us what to think and how to talk, right? We kind of look at him and laugh these days. There's some YouTube stars who are pretty big in that regard, but I don't think anybody is more powerful in determining how we think about politics than Elon Musk right now, because he is the owner of the forum in which all major political questions are debated and discussed, Twitter. I find it terrifying, chilling, disturbing that Elon Musk, as far as I know, since he bought Twitter, has again and again and again aggressively, publicly sided with Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government, the United States against Venezuela and the Maduro government, with Ukraine and Zelensky against Russia. He has again and again and again, since buying Twitter, sided with the Western Empire.
Oh, and real quick.
So, yeah.
This is what I was saying about Trump potentially being the establishment candidate. You have Elon Musk, who has all these globalist establishment views, who, was very neutral actually in 2020, and now has supported Trump. And if Elon Musk is the reason Trump gets elected by buying Twitter and creating this echo chamber, much like Steve Bannon did with Breitbart, is it possible that you've got the establishment candidate this time around being Trump?
Yeah, that's where we're headed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're right. Or at least I should say, I would like to present this as a warning to Trump and MAGA. Like, I would like to say to them, if you don't correct course, you will end up as the establishment very soon. You're headed in that direction. So yeah, I mean, it's And Venezuela is a great example, right? So Trump is the one who imposed the most extreme sanctions on Venezuela in 2017, 18, I think it was. And yes, they're commies. I know. Chavez, Maduro, commies. Communist, socialist, whatever. Collectivized economy, what's it called? Command and control economy. Some private sector stuff, just a mixed economy, but a lot of heavy duty government intervention in the economy. We know that's a disaster, no doubt about it, but it's always been exacerbated radically by these sanctions imposed by the United States, who have wanted access to the oil, or more recently, now that the United States is oil independent, energy independent, they've just wanted to make sure that no bad guys get access to Venezuela's oil, like Russia or China or whoever. And so that's why they've been engaged in serious regime change operations for about 25 years now, since Chavez took power in 1999. Yeah, 25 years. Constant, relentless. So we have activists on the ground being paid by the United States government to foment rebellion against the government since 1999. All sorts of sanctions and a massive global media campaign against Venezuela, demonizing them. Yes, again, like commies. If I lived in Venezuela, most likely I'd be opposed to the government too, but that's not the case in Venezuela. It's just a different thing there. What people don't understand is that the United States has been a central player in Venezuelan history since about 1937, I think it was, since they discovered oil there. They discovered oil right before World War II in Venezuela. And for about 50 years, the US just dominated Venezuela, controlled them, and got a lot of oil from them, kept our gas prices low. Then we became energy independent, and Chavez took power in 1999. And then we saw, once he started to nationalize the oil and reject American empire explicitly, we saw that not so much as a loss of energy supply for the United States, but we saw it as possibly, most likely, giving away all that energy, all that oil to our potential enemies. And we can't allow that to happen. So we have also, during the last 20 years, increasing relations between Venezuela and Russia, between Venezuela and China, and now Venezuela and Iran. And so that is why there are riots in the streets in Caracas. That is why we have protests and marches across Venezuela for the last 20 years. That's why we have all this violence in Venezuela, political violence, basically a low-grade civil war for 2 decades. The United States has been behind almost all of it because Venezuela chose an independent, autonomous path, and because they are now positioned outside of the American empire, and they are now able to lend their services and their energy and their money to the rivals of the United States. And that's what's going on. So there we are. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Michael. We are going to go hang out. What's that?
After show tonight?
Totally. After show right now. Can't wait. Go to patreon.com/unregistered if you want to join us at the party, the after show, after every Unreported on Thursdays. We do what's called Unregistered Live. It's a Zoom meeting with me and Michael. We hang out, do drugs, and hang and talk for a while. It's super fun. We've been doing it for years, and you should join it now. For $5 a month, you can get this. Go to patreon.com/unregistered, and I am going to go there now.
Dope. See you there.
Dope, man. Thank you. Peace.
Yeah. Oh, and the theme. People were saying it's the hand claps that make it sound like In the Club by 50 Cent. So,
totally.
Yeah. All right. We're out.
Peace.